Quarters, the classic Kiwi icon Fred Dagg. Now tributes are pouring in on both sides of the Tasman for comedian John Clarke, who died suddenly at the age of 68. Those who knew him well say his legacy will have a lasting effect on the country's comedy landscape. Cartoonist Tom Scott is with us this morning. Good morning, Tom. You've lost a good mate.
Yeah, I have. It's a very sad day. I got no sleep last night, lying in bed thinking I'll never ever have another long boozy lunch in Melbourne with John. It's terribly sad.
Tell us how your paths first crossed.
Well, I was at Massey University way back in the bleak late 60s. I heard about John. People would come up from Victoria University and say there's this amazing guy in Wellington at Victoria University who's stunningly funny. You'd get on. So I resented him long before I met him. When I did meet him, he was everything people told me he was. He was just so funny. And we wrote a capping magazine together called Horse, which remained unsold because it was too clever. And John's stuff was just so funny. He'd read it out to me on the phone, and I'd be on the floor laughing. He was so funny and so inventive and such a nice man.
That's something that has come up again and again and again. He was a genius, but also just such a lovely soul as well.
He was. He was from a humble background. He wasn't a privileged child, and his father was difficult and a heavy drinker, and John didn't get on very well with his father. So he knew what it was like to be on the wrong side and to be underprivileged. And he worked in a shearing gang for 2 years, and it was there that he picked up that love of New Zealand language and the way Kiwis talk.
A lot of Kiwi comedians calling him the father of modern Kiwi comedy. What was it about his humour that just seemed to click with us?
Well, there was a gap before that. It was a bit like Beatlemania. He was the comic equivalent of Beatlemania. There appeared to be a vacuum. John filled that vacuum immediately, and it's because he observed New Zealanders, listened carefully, and he reflected Kiwis back to other Kiwis. And he was a great listener, and the language he used from the shearing gangs. Plus, he had affection for the targets. He loved farmers, and it was his love and fondness for rural New Zealand that came through his work.
And we loved Fred Dagg, didn't we? I mean, and as you say, he spoke with such an authentic voice that Fred Dagg seemed to us to be a real person.
Well, he was. He was a real person. John was that person. He was lovely. And before him, there was only Barry Crump stuff, which was sour and misogynist and stupid racist stuff in Truth magazine. There was hardly any humour at all. Maybe in Christchurch, A.K. Grant was starting to emerge as a writer. But John and A.K. Grant, between the two of them, virtually invented New Zealand comedy.
And he did so much across the Tasman too. What do you think is probably his greatest accomplishment?
Oh, he would say his family and his wonderful daughters and his grandchildren. I think the interviews he did with Dawes were absolutely brilliant. I saw one recently where he was taking the mickey out of Donald Trump. John was still as sharp as Stephen Colbert or Seth Meyers or any of those top American comedians. He was still unbelievably relevant, and he had so much to say. He was great on social issues in Australia, on racism and misogyny and the gap between the rich and the poor. John was publicly mild, but privately very, very angry at a lot of the unfairness in both sides of the Tasman.
He has been claimed by the Aussies. They're calling him Australian. Did he consider himself Australian or a Kiwi? Oh,
he was always a Kiwi. The reason he never came back was his terrible fear of flying. He missed his parents' funerals. It was only his terrible fear. He could not get on a plane. He talked increasingly, he got more and more nostalgic for New Zealand, and every time we caught up, he wanted to talk about New Zealand. He was delighted and excited by the explosion in New Zealand films and music and Peter Jackson's success and Taika Waititi. And my communication with him increased and increased and increased. And all of his New Zealand friends said the same thing. John was more and more nostalgic about New Zealand.
What are you going to miss most about him going?
Oh, just his company, just sitting with him. And he was so clever and he'd read so widely. He knew so much. And if I could make him laugh, if I could make John Clarke laugh, my God, that was pretty cool.
I can understand completely. Tom Scott, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts this morning.
Thank you.
It's 8 to 9 on Breakfast. Taika Waititi has done it